Hello, this is Tony Heller from realclimatescience.com. 10 years ago, Al Gore wrote this blog post. For the first time since their record keeping began 12 years ago, the U.S. Drought Monitor reports that more than half of the lower 48 states are in drought. So according to Nobel laureate Al Gore, drought record keeping began in the year 2000. That was the same year which election denier Al Gore refused to accept the fact that he had lost the presidential election. Note that another famous election denier, Hillary Clinton, is also in the picture. Democrats were very upset that Donald Trump said he might not accept the results of the 2016 election. That was before Donald Trump won the election. After the election, the Democrats refused to accept the election results. Democrats spent the next 4 years investigating a completely fake claim that Donald Trump had colluded with the Russians to interfere with the election. The basis of the investigation was Russian misinformation purchased by the FBI and Hillary Clinton. And the press covered this completely fake story 24/7 for several years. Democrats spent a lot of time this century disputing election results. But now they say questioning the results of an election is treason and terrorism. But getting back to the subject of droughts, let's take a look at Al Gore's claim. For a lot of the 20th century, more than half of the United States was in moderate to extreme drought. During the 1950s, half of the United States was in moderate to extreme drought about half the time. The worst U.S. drought was in 1934, when almost 80% of the country was in drought. Most people who completed primary school are aware of the fact that during the 1930s we had a devastating drought called the Dust Bowl. However, Al Gore appears to be unaware of it. This story is already very ridiculous, but it gets worse. NASA's James Hansen started the global warming scare before Congress in 1988. In December 1988, he said the chances of summer drought in the low to middle latitudes would be 1 in 3 by the year 2030, as against 1 in 20 in the 1950s. But as we just saw, the United States was in drought for about half of the 1950s. So the actual odds of drought during the 1950s was 1 in 2 rather than 1 in 20. Dr. Hansen was off by a factor of 10. There's no evidence that droughts in the United States have become more common or more severe over the past century. But if we go back further in time before the year 1500, there's plenty of evidence of much longer and much more severe droughts. The western U.S. has experienced megadroughts lasting more than 200 years. The Anasazi were wiped out by a 70-year-long drought during the 13th century. Like the Anasazi, the Jamestown colonists were nearly wiped out by a very severe drought. Tree ring data from Virginia indicate that the lost colony of Roanoke Island disappeared during the most extreme drought in 800 years, from 1587 to 1589, and that the alarming mortality and the near abandonment of Jamestown Colony occurred during the driest 7-year episode in 770 years, from 1606 to 1612. There isn't one shred of evidence to support the idea that the burning of fossil fuels has made droughts worse. But that's the scam being pushed by Nobel laureate Al Gore and NASA's James Hansen. Toto understands that almost nothing in the news cycle about climate or any other topic has anything to do with reality. He's been pulling back the curtain on fake news for the past 14 years. You can visit him, Kyrie Caesar, Toki and Upla on the web at realclimatescience.com.